people think you find product market fit once and then you're good. And I think in our experience, it's been you find product market fit within one customer segment or for one product, and you need to continuously be finding product market fit either for new products that you launch or for new customer segments that you're entering into.
Welcome to In Depth, a show that surfaces tactical advice founders and startup leaders need to grow their teams, companies, and themselves. I'm Brett Burson, a partner at First Round, and we're a venture capital firm that helps startups like Notion, Roblox, Uber, and Square tackle company building firsts. On the In-Depth podcast, we share weekly conversations with startup leaders that skip the talking points and go deeper into not just what to do, but how to do it. Learn more and subscribe today at firstround.com.
Hey everyone, welcome to In Depth. I'm Todd Jackson, and I'm a partner here at First Round. I'm back guest hosting the latest episode in our series that explores founders' different paths to product market fit. In this episode, I'm thrilled to be joined by Laura Behrens Wu. She's the co-founder and CEO of Shippo. Shippo is a multi-carrier shipping API that helps e-commerce businesses by simplifying their shipping needs. Customers can track packages, schedule pickups, print labels, and compare prices from different carriers all on one platform. You can think of it like Stripe or Twilio, but for shipping. Shippo's products are used by over 120,000 online stores and major brands like Walmart, Wayfair, and Etsy. They've raised over $100 million in VC funding, and Shippo was last valued at $1 billion in 2021. But Laura wasn't always this plugged into the shipping world. Shippo didn't start out as a shipping company at all, but as an e-commerce store that sold handbags. That was Laura and her co-founder Simon's first business. But when they themselves ran into roadblocks trying to ship their products to customers, they knew they had discovered a much bigger problem to solve. In our conversation, we explore how Laura thinks about product market fit and how she sees it as something founders always need to be chasing and continuously rediscovering. To help break this down, she describes the Horizon framework they use at Shippo. This is a framework that founders at growth stage companies can use to think about how much time to spend on their core product versus new products. The story of Shippo is a masterclass on thinking about product market fit. It's also an underdog story. Laura and her co-founder took big swings in a game they previously knew nothing about, coming in as outsiders to Silicon Valley and outsiders to the shipping industry. And it paid off exponentially. I'm so excited to have Laura join us on the podcast today to dig into her journey. And now, on to my conversation with Laura. Laura, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
And so, Laura, I know that Shippo's origin story, wasn't exactly a linear process. So could you take us back to that time in your life when you first decided to start a company?
Yeah. So let's see. It starts with, so I'm not originally from like the Bay Area or even from the US. I was born and raised in Germany. And then I was working for a startup actually in Switzerland, like right out of college. And at that point in time, like I've never been to San Francisco before. I wanted to experience kind of the startup ecosystem here. And all I knew about SF was just what you could read on TechCrunch and the media. So I had pretty high expectations. I started applying on like AngelList for different jobs and got like a summer internship through a friend who was in YC. So I got a referral, got some interviews within like the YC network, and through that got a summer job in San Francisco, moved here. And I mean, it was a really like magical moment for me because in Germany, like kind of straight out of college jobs are pretty hierarchical. Like you start at the bottom of the totem pole. You don't get like any serious or real responsibilities. And that startup was maybe 20 people. It was a fintech company. And it was a very different work environment, like the kind of environment where an intern can come in and like experiment with things and pitch ideas directly to the CEO. And they were like getting ready to fundraise. So we had a very clear revenue target and everyone was all hands on deck to hit that target. And I just loved that. I really loved working in that environment. And I think my takeaway from that was like, I do not want to go back to Germany. I don't want to like be an entry level person in a German company. And at that point in time, I like started brainstorming just what could I do in San Francisco? Like, could I start my own company? And I got together with my now co-founder, Simon, who like happened to be like fundraising for a different startup at that point in time in San Francisco. That startup wasn't going anywhere.
What year was this, by the way?
That was, I want to say like 2013. Yeah, that was rough. That was 2013. So it wasn't going anywhere, and we decided to just start building something together. Kind of at the beginning, we whole lot of brainstorming, couldn't really figure out what we should be building. And I think the main kind of issue at that point in time was that we didn't have any groundbreaking ideas. And we just decided at some point that, okay, we're just going to get started. We need to start building something. And the easiest thing to start building is kind of in the e-commerce space. So our idea then was, we had this vision of Farfetch, but for independent designers. Let's build an online marketplace where we showcase independent designers. We thought it was a good enough idea to at least start building. And from that idea, we the first iteration was even more basic. A marketplace is really hard to kickstart. So we said, we're just going to buy a few items and sell them ourselves, pretend as if this was a marketplace. So we started a Shopify store. Then that got us into shipping for the first time. We had to stand in line at the post office. We had a few orders come in, not too many. But we did experience kind of shipping as a problem firsthand, including how to get the items kind of from the emerging designers to us, and then how to ship them outbound again to our customers, and how to work with inventory. So shipping was kind of really the least fun part of that experience. And it involved standing in line, figuring out post office hours. It involved trying to get advice, how to ship the cheapest. And yeah, there was just no good resource for getting advice, and no technology interface that we thought was kind of up to par with the other e-commerce technologies we were using. And specifically, we were using, our e-commerce stack was kind of the usual one, Stripe and Shopify, two super easy, SMB friendly interfaces. And then, yeah, we couldn't find that for shipping. And that's how the Shippo idea was born.
So at what point were you hey, this e-commerce idea that we're doing is okay, but we think that the shipping idea could be way bigger? What was the thought process behind, it was a pivot, right? So what was the thought process behind the pivot?
Kind of the moment was, I remember the founder I used to work for at the fintech company beforehand. His thing was always build something that's a painkiller, not a vitamin. And he said that a lot in kind of the day-to-day context. And that really stuck with me and resonated with me. So when we were building that online store, we had a few orders coming in, but when we realized that shipping was difficult to do, it just seemed like a clear painkiller. Shipping is hard. Every single e-commerce merchant needs to ship. And if it's hard for us, it must be hard for other people as well. There was no real aha moment at one point in time. It was just really it was gradual. We ran into that problem. And then at some point, I remember a conversation with my co-founder where we realized this could be bigger than what we were initially building, and this could be our idea. And he was saying to me that, well, he's not sure if he really wants to work on a logistics problem for the next 10 years of his life. And he wasn't as passionate about logistics just yet. And to be fair, neither one of us came up from the logistics background. So we were learning as we were building, and kind of we agreed on let's start building, let's start getting some customers. And then once we have customers, if we develop that passion, we'll go all in. If we don't, then that's totally fine as well. It was really kind of a step at a time. And I think it started taking off as we started getting customers, as we started getting really happy customers responding. We were doing customer support ourselves, we're talking to the customers, and that got us extremely passionate. Just being able to talk to the customers and realize we're solving a real pain point here.
So maybe going back a few months before that, before you really had anything. I know, some founders start by building. Some founders start by doing tons of customer discovery and just talking to customers, a bunch of them before they write any code. Which of those kind of two paths did you guys choose to pursue?
We were building, and this means that we had a few different iterations of our product. We were building stuff that we then had to discard again. The first version of our product was, again, we were coming from a almost a very like small SMB experience. So we thought like a good analogy would be something like Expedia, where you can like search a website and you get all different shipping results, and then you pick one and you buy one. So we like the first iteration was a website like that. And then we realized that actually like a lot of our SMB customers, they ship many orders a month, not just one or two. And if you ship many orders like on a daily basis, then you don't want to click through this interface one by one. So that was our first like, we built this, we started talking to customers and then got this feedback. And then we realized that, Stripe has like the Stripe model of API first. It could work for our industry as well. So we like pivoted to that approach. And that was like, it is the approach that we're taking now, but there were a few bumps along the way where like when we started talking to customers, then the realization was that like shipping is such a mission critical infrastructure component that if you are a company that knows how to integrate an API, you really don't want to integrate an API that is like unproven and unused by anyone else. So the next iteration was kind of combining the two, where we built a dashboard on top of the API and connected that to the Shopify App Store. At that point in time, it just launched. And that was what got us the first traction. And like right now, Shippo is both like an API first company, but also has an interface, like a dashboard on top that small SMBs can use if they don't know how to use an API.
So how did you get your very first customers?
The very first customers were through Shopify. The Shopify App Store, I think it was really a moment in time situation where we were at the right place at the right time. Like Shopify was starting to take off. They just launched their App Store. There are not a lot of shipping competitors on that App Store. And by talking to customers, we realized that like a lot of the customers we were talking to were Shopify customers already. And they wanted an easy way for them to be able to ship their orders that they got like through Shopify. So we built this app. They have a review system on the Shopify App Store. And by getting like one or two customers there, we got a good amount of like reviews and then word of mouth. And that's how it started taking off.
And what were kind of the options back then? If I was an e-commerce Shopify merchant, what were my current options for how to solve this shipping problem?
Yeah, I think the options were like, number one, you can just physically go to the post office. You can stand in line, or it's not just a post office. You can do UPS and FedEx as well. So that was like option number one, just like doing this in an offline way. The second option is like the different shipping providers, they do have online interfaces. So you can like try using their online interfaces as well. And then we have like an incumbent competitor, like at that point in time, they were called stamps.com. Now they're called Octane. So that was the third option. And I think to take a step back, like the problem that we're really solving is that like our customers are SMBs, and they're like primarily online merchants who are best at running an online store, but they're not like best in class in shipping. However, they're competing with like retail giants such as Amazon, who have set consumer expectations to be like sky high around free and fast shipping. So there's a mismatch in like what an online merchant can deliver versus what the consumer expectations are. And we're building that technology to make sure that our customers can connect to all different shipping providers. They can like deliver on like the best in class shipping, and then they can do tracking, returns, insurance, like everything on a single platform. And we started in the SMB segment, but now have gone up market into mid-market, and we power a whole lot of platforms and marketplaces as well that then work with SMBs in turn.
You mentioned the Shopify Marketplace App Store and how that was kind of a new thing at that time. Do you think that was really a critical part of the market timing that you got right? Could Shippo have worked a couple years earlier or a couple years later? Or do you think you got the timing exactly right?
I think we got the timing right. And it's because of a bunch of things coming together, like Shopify for sure, making it extremely easy for SMBs to start selling on the internet. Like I do think that was a moment in time situation. Shippo is necessary because more people are selling online these days. And people who are selling online are not just kind of the professional retailers, but anyone is selling on Etsy, on Shopify. Like the barriers of entry of being an online merchant are lowered. So yes, I think that for sure played a big role. The Shopify App Store was great timing for us. And I think if I look at some of our initial revenue charts, they are like our earliest revenue all came from the Shopify App Store. I think we would have found a way to make it work, maybe through another platform or another app store. But all these factors did really contribute to like our early success.
So one of the things that I've heard you talk about is this idea of kind of being an outsider to the shipping industry, which was sort of an insider's industry. And that's affected the way that you've thought about things and really, I think, contributed to your success. What do you, how do you think about that?
Yeah, it's an interesting question because like I hear people talk about like founder market fit, and we for sure had no founder market fit. Like my co-founder Simon and I were coming at it from like a complete outsider's perspective. We were doing e-commerce for the first time and then like shipping for the first time, and then realized that the way shipping is being done right now is not merchant friendly. So that was like our kind of our wedge into the industry. It's been mostly advantageous for us. I think that the shipping industry is such an industry with a whole lot of history and a very like shipping has been going on for such a long time. So when you come at it from like an outsider's perspective, you're able to think outside of the box. Like you're able to think about how it should be for an SMB merchant to be the most successful, and not how it's always been. So I'll be a little bit more specific here. Like when we started, like one of the earlier barriers for an SMB merchant was that when you start shipping or when you want to ship, in order to qualify for any kinds of volume discounts, you need to sign up for a FedEx account or a USPS account, and then you need to start building up volume, and that just takes some time. Like our thought was anyone, like as soon as you sign up for Shippo, you should be able to start shipping right away. Like it's just such a bummer if you need to go sign up for a UPS account and then come back to Shippo. Like that makes no sense. It was really hard to get the shipping providers excited about that. But by now, like all the different shipping providers, like you can start shipping right away when you sign up on Shippo. And it's been a huge BD effort. Just this year, we got FedEx to agree to this kind of account structure. So it's literally taken us like 8 to 9 years with certain shipping providers to get them comfortable with that, and to be like to bring that SMB or merchant friendly mindset to shipping providers.
What was the very first one of those that you got to work? Like you were basically coming at it as, hey, this user experience is lame if they can't, like if they sign up for Shippo and then they have to go elsewhere to create an account. But that's also like a hard thing to do as a startup, to go start, approaching these big shipping companies. So like, what was the first thing that you did there?
The first thing we did was we hacked it a little. We worked with a third party aggregator that had a special, like a different kind of contract that allowed us to do this. So we first worked with an aggregator. And then as we got enough volume, we started approaching the shipping providers directly and got our own contracts and got the shipping providers comfortable with it. But yes, I think our first like iteration of this was that we hacked it. We found someone who had a pretty good shipping agreement and were able to use theirs.
That's great. And it's like, I'm trying to generalize this a little bit into the like, what are the pros and cons of like sort of the lack of founder market fit and having fresh eyes to this industry? Because maybe the person who's been in this industry forever, like they would just accept that like that's how shipping worked. They wouldn't have gone that route. Do you have kind of general thoughts on like what is good founder market fit versus where is it actually better to not have founder market fit?
This is a hard question. There are some problems where, like, for example, if you're building like a hard tech startup, like you need the expertise in order to be credible, to know what you're talking about and to be able to build that product. For us, it was the kind of situation where coming at it from the perspective of the customer was a unique advantage. But yeah, I think it depends on, like I'm spitballing, but for, like, in an SMB business, like it's high velocity and there's like a lot of customer touch points and you're able to iterate and test fast. So it feels like for this SMB business, it worked very well. But I feel like if you're just selling to, or your first customer is an enterprise customer, and maybe you're selling something that's like a little harder to, or that's more of a hard tech product, you might require deeper expertise there.
That makes sense. I want to go back, Laura, to the, we like to talk a lot about the kind of the path to product market fit. And you mentioned V1 of Shippo was like this UI based product where you could ship one thing at a time. And then you added the API, and then you added like the API plus the UI, the dashboard UI. Can you sort of take us through those iterations and the feedback that you were getting from customers and just like the insights that you unlocked along the way to guide you to what the right product was?
For us, a lot of it was about kind of just iterating and testing and speed to market. We realized shipping was a problem for us. So we started talking to a few other e-commerce store owners to just learn how they're shipping and see if they have any best practices, any insights to share. And that was really coming from the perspective of we wanted to ship better ourselves. And then through those conversations, we realized that other people were having similar challenges. So from there, we kind of looked at how have other people solved this, and Expedia came to mind as an idea of shipping and flying should be pretty similar. And all you want to do is compare different rates. And then you want to buy labels from different shipping providers on the same website without having to go somewhere else. That was our first prototype. And we took it to a few SMBs and actually got people to buy shipping labels, but we didn't get any continuous usage, mostly because it was too time consuming, every day to click through that interface. But I think kind of to your point, an important part for us was that we were talking to customers ourselves. At that point in time, it's just me and Simon working with customers directly. And the two of us would take those phone calls. We would respond to customer requests ourselves. We'd be very upfront about we're an SMB. We're just like you. We're also an SMB. We're trying to build something. And we weren't pretending that we were a big company full of customer support people or product people. We're just super upfront and direct. And I feel like that really made a difference in those conversations because people were willing to give us their time. And then the same people we built that relationship with, they were then also willing to leave reviews on Shopify on the App Store when it came to that time. And yes, so I think it was those kinds of direct conversations, phone calls. And it is something where I think it's quite uncomfortable to talk to a stranger on the phone and to kind of know that your product is suboptimal at this point in time and you're a little embarrassed about it. But it was, that was kind of a fear that we had to overcome. And we still have some of those early customers using Shippo. I get support tickets directly to my email every now and then from these customers.
And when things were tough in those days and, you make this product, people use it once and then they don't stick around. What kept you going? Why didn't you just give up?
We were pretty sure that we were onto something. And we thought we were onto something because the customers we were talking to said this provided some kind of value, but not enough value. So we didn't get customer feedback that was along the lines of this sucks, don't ever talk to me again. But the feedback was encouraging. It was encouraging feedback. Yep, seems like you're on the right track, but these kinds of things are not going that well, or this is not feasible. And it kept us going. So yes, I think just encouraging customer conversations kept us going. Plus, we really wanted to figure this out. There was some kind of personal desperation around we want to stay in San Francisco. We like it here so much. We don't want to go back to Europe. We want to stay here. We want to make something work. So yes, I think it was a combination of these two. Also, I am more so than my co-founder, just eternally optimistic. So I think there's a lot of just personality and optimism going in there as well.
So let's flip it around then. Was there a moment, in those first couple of years when you were actually whoa, this is actually starting to work? This is a good idea, and where you sort of gained that internal confidence?
Yeah. A few different moments here that come to my mind. We had this chart, and we also showed that in our first pitch deck about signups coming through Shopify, and those were our only signups. So signups in general, plus the shipping labels bought through Shippo, and it was the classic hockey stick chart, really the classic chart. And I mean, the numbers were small in comparison to where we are right now. But that chart, seeing that was incredible. And it felt amazing. So that was, I think that chart, we're looking at it just obsessively. And at least to us at that time, it showed us that we were onto something and this was working. And then we did get into like an accelerator at some point. Like we were rejected by YC and then got into 500 startups. And that started feeling real, like starting to use the name of the company, Shippo, and other people were using the name as well. And you know how when you're just the two of you talking about this, it sounds like it's all made up and not real, but suddenly you have other people using the name and it's starting to feel real.
You mentioned something interesting around, you went to these small business owners and you're like, hey, I'm a small business owner too. Like I'm the founder. You're talking directly to the founder. And what I heard from that was that it sort of created a little bit of like goodwill and community and people rooting for you. How important do you think that is? And is that something that you think founders really need in those early days?
I think it depends on the audience and depends on the style that you prefer. So we were talking to SMB owners, SMB store owners at that moment in time. So I think for the SMB audience, we like just being one of them and showing that we were one of them was key and was very important. Again, I think if you're selling to an enterprise company, you might want to like make yourself bigger than you actually are. So it depends on the audience. But I think for the SMB audience, like one of the upsides is that you are able to talk to the store owner directly or the business owner directly, and then like kind of communicating that we're talking business owner to business owner. We are just like you trying to build a business. We're trying to do the same thing here, and we're not sending you to, I don't know, a salesperson or a customer support person. I think that was crucial. And to your question about like how important is it to a startup founder, I do think like being super close to your early customers is very important for a startup founder. I think it's energizing. I think it's energizing. It's motivating. I think for an SMB product, at least, like you want to get usage as quickly as possible and just like watch people using your product and learn from that.
I can tell that you're extremely customer driven. And this is the thing that gives you energy and that gives you kind of momentum. When you think a little bit about some of the things that founders tend to do right in thinking about customers and some of the things that founders tend to do wrong when it comes to listening to customers, what comes to mind for you?
So I think the hard part is that when you talk to a customer or when you talk to 10 customers, you're probably going to be getting like 9 different opinions and then figuring out like what is it that actually matters. And I think that the flip side of being extremely customer centric and the feedback that I'm getting from my team today is that like we can't make it right for every single customer. Like some customers are just going to be unhappy, and that is okay. Like be very distracting if we try to make every single customer happy. And that was a good learning for me. And is something that I'm continuously working on. Like when I get like a customer complaint, I want to make sure that I'm not distracting the entire team by just passing that complaint along unfiltered. Yeah, I think being extremely customer centric has a lot of upsides, but it has the downside of like if you listen to every single customer, you're not going to be able to follow your own roadmap. You're just going to be dragged into all kinds of different directions. And yeah, there are a ton of edge cases. So you need to understand just what is something that every customer is experiencing versus like this particular customer has a strange kind of setup that just, is suboptimal and not the right way to go about things.
Do you think that most founders tend to not talk to customers enough? Or talk to customers too much and kind of over-rotate on what they say?
I think it's probably the former, that they don't talk to customers enough. But yes, once you start talking to customers, I think it's important to keep in mind that you can't make it right for every single customer, and some customers are going to be unhappy.
Why do you think that is with most founders? And like, why is it so easily different for you?
I mean, putting yourself out there, talking to a stranger is a hard thing. It's just, I think outbound sales, customer support is incredibly hard because you might get rejected, you might get complaints, just like how do you deal with that? It's much safer to just write a bunch of documents, have other people do this for you. It's much more comfortable. Why is it easy for me? I think it's one of those things where I've gotten rejected a lot, so I'm fine with that by now. I think I'm not like scared of rejection anymore at this point. Yeah, I don't think there is any winning formula. I think like for a founder who wants to get into this, like I'd just say like put a number, put a goal down. Like you want to talk to 10 customers a day or 10 customers a week, and then just do that. And once you start getting into the habit, you'll get into the habit and it'll become more comfortable over time. But I don't think it's something that like people are born with unless you're extremely extroverted, which I'm not.
Okay, I want to talk about sort of like we've talked about the early years, and now kind of want to talk about the middle years and the progress that you guys were making, and maybe also how it aligned with how you thought about fundraising along the way. Like it sounds like you raised your seed round kind of right at the end of 500 startups. When did you raise your Series A or your Series B, and sort of like how was the business kind of growing along with that?
So we raised our seed round, yes, right at the end of 500 startups. And I should say that, like, just back to the topic of rejection, like I have a spreadsheet and we talked to a whole lot of like investors for that seed round to come together. I think there was a steep learning curve for me as well about like what kinds of investors to talk to and like learning about different like stages for different investors. But yes, in total, I talked to 125 investors for that round of financing and ended up raising from 11. And the situation at that time was, I think people or like investors were not that aware of shipping as a problem. It was not a very like hot topic just yet, logistics. And I think when it became hot, it was through kind of more of those on-demand logistics solutions such as Ship. So that was like, I think roughly at the same time when we were raising our A and B, like that was kind of what's top of mind for investors. So yes, we talked to a whole lot of them, and like through that refined our pitch and how to talk about the business. And when we started getting traction, like when we started getting a few investors that were actually in, like it turned out to be really fast. But getting to those like first one or two anchor investors, that was the hard part. And then for our Series A and our Series B, like I met one investor during our seed round, Albert Wenger from Union Square Ventures, who wouldn't invest at that point in time, but we really like hit it off. And he's also from Germany, and we like just decided to stay in touch. And I think it was more of a one-sided decision. I decided to stay in touch with Albert, and Albert every now and then responded to my emails. So I kept him updated as we were like progressing. And then they ended up doing our Series A. And it was then like somewhat similar for our Series B. Like we met an investor during the A who then did the B.
What was it that, because you were staying in touch with Albert for a while, when was it that like, okay, you're ready. I'm ready to do the Series A in Shippo?
I think that had to be driven by us, to be honest. Like we were saying, like we're fundraising now and creating a bit of a forcing function there. That we're fundraising, we're starting to talk to other people. Other people are going to be interested too, and then that was the forcing function for Albert to start looking at it more seriously. But yes, I think in terms of fundraising, it needs to be driven by the founder, in the sense that you need to create like that typical like FOMO situation where you can tell investors that other people are going to be making a decision like in the next week or so to force that decision making, because otherwise like investors can keep taking like they can keep wanting to see data points and updates over a long amount of time.
Was Shippo's growth curve kind of consistent that entire time, and fundraising just happened like at, some arbitrary point on that growth curve? Or was it like you hit a certain milestone, you got X dollars in revenue, you got Y number of customers? Or was it just sort of like the curve was the curve and you just chose to fundraise at the moment that worked?
So for our Series A, let's see. I think a big moment for us that we started getting customers using our API directly. So like, remember that the story was we had like an API first business, but a web app on top of the API, and then a lot of SMBs using that. And then like we started getting adoption for our API product. And through that, like again, accelerated our growth, because an API customer tends to be a larger customer than a web app customer. So that started adding to just accelerated growth. The funny story with our Series A is that we geared up for fundraising. We're almost ready. And then one of our largest customers churned, We got them back. But that really like just delayed our fundraising timeline. We got them back. We got some good learnings about account management because we had this interesting situation where for the first time ever, someone was using, customers were using our API. Those were much larger customers, and we didn't know about account management just yet because our previous customers were all SMBs. So yes, we learned a valuable lesson about account management, got this customer back. This customer is still a Shippo customer today, and then got our Series A raised.
Awesome. So, Laura, you've mentioned that Shippo's core product has evolved quite a bit over 10 years, and I think it's interesting because like most founders have a hard enough time just finding product market fit once, but it's a real feat to be able to find product market fit a second time or a third time. So, when did you sort of start to think, "Hey, we have product market fit, but we need to either expand the market that we're selling to or expand the number of products that we're building"? When was that kind of moment in the journey?
Yeah. So I love I think this podcast is meant to be about like product market fit, right? And I love the question because people think you find product market fit once and then you're good. And I think in our experience, it's been you find product market fit within one customer segment or for one product, and you need to continuously be finding product market fit either for new products that you launch or for new customer segments that you're entering into. So our first product market fit was like really narrow for like an SMB audience using Shopify. And that was like super narrow, gave us a really awesome like a hockey stick chart. And then like we had to continuously find product market fit for like the next customer segment for the next products that we're launching. And I think right now, just to share what we currently have and then what we're working on is like our SMB product through different app stores is still a kind of a really nice revenue generating engine for Shippo. And we can talk about the Horizons framework in a bit, but that's kind of our Horizon 1 product. And then in addition to our SMB product, that was initially just about shipping, we tagged on like shipping insurance and tracking and just a bunch of shipping adjacent products. Then we expanded into, we're always meant to be an API first business. So then we expanded into how do we make this API work? And the amazing part here was that the first objection we got like from customers about using the API was that, well, no one else is using the API. But through the dashboard, like that was built on top of the API, we started having volume coming through that. And we're able to say, actually, like this API is already like powering shipping for this amount of labels. And then we started getting some API customers. Our first API customers were like the API customers that we're serving now are like mid-market customers, and we're continuously pushing up market. And we're like in the middle of doing a 2024 planning exercise to go further and further up market, where we're like seeking product market fit for the first time and like really, again, interviewing like mid-market customers, learning from them and seeing what features we need to add to be like more compelling in that segment. And then we also power platforms and marketplaces that work with SMBs. And I think that was really, or I think that's really cool because we're able to go to these platforms and marketplaces to say that we know the SMB audience. We already have product market fit there. And now we're going to help you build shipping for that audience that we know so well. And those kinds of SMB platforms and marketplaces, they're like Etsy and Shopify in Europe and Depop, Mercari, like a lot of them that use us for shipping in the background. But it worked. Like we got product market fit there because they have the same customer segment that we already have product market fit in.
So how do you think about this as a founder doing this at a bigger scale? Because it's so different when it's just you and Simon. You can go talk to a bunch of customers. You're like, hey, we're just the two founders. Right? It's almost like the hunt for product market fit at that stage is so natural. And then, but Shippo now, you've got a bunch of employees, you've got all these things that are working already. How do you do brand new things at the scale that you're at?
So a framework that I've really enjoyed here is the Horizon framework. And the high level explanation of that framework is that you've got a Horizon 1 product that is working and it works really well. It's the core part of your business, probably the majority of your revenue. And it's all about optimizing. It's about making it work better, like really building this revenue engine there. But you don't want to take too much like of a risk there. Like it's a mature product. And I think then you have your Horizon 2 and Horizon 3 products that are forward-looking, and you're making a forward-looking investment. You don't have product market fit in those areas just yet. And like Horizon 2 is kind of, you have a good hunch that there's something there and it'll work. Horizon 3 is, these are like insane things, and like you're just dabbling. You have no idea whether or not that could be a business line in the future. And I think the mistake that a lot of founders make is that when they get excited about Horizon 2 and 3, because those are exciting forward-looking things, like they get distracted from Horizon 1, and they like the organization, just gets distracted, foot off the gas on Horizon 1, and you start getting deflated there. But in order to be able to enter Horizon 2 and 3, you need to have Horizon 1 work really well and drive a whole lot of revenue. So like that framework also suggests that like the majority of your team members should be working on Horizon 1 products. And then you have like, let's say 70% doing Horizon 1, like 20% doing Horizon 2, and then 10% playing around with Horizon 3. But I think, it's just so important to not like just focus on the big shiny stuff in the future and forget about what is actually generating revenue today.
The 70-20-10 framework, like that's, way back in the day when I was at Google, we used to talk about that. Do you do that pretty strictly? Like, is it roughly 70% of the folks at Shippo are working on the core thing, and then it's 20-10 for the others?
We try to do it really strictly. And I say that because I think we've gotten distracted in the past. Like we've made those mistakes where I got excited about a new thing in the future, and then suddenly everyone thinks they should be paying attention to that. And so I think from a founder perspective, it's totally fine for the founder to be thinking more about Horizon 2 and 3 and to be paying more attention to that. But the rest of the organization should be split up this way, where the majority of the organization takes care of Horizon 1, because that's where revenue comes from today. And then it's just a really key to make sure that the team members who are working on Horizon 1 feel like they're doing something really important for the company, and not that they're working on, like an overlooked part of the business. So yes, I think when we talk at all hands, or when we like just give shout outs in the company, really trying to make sure that we're not just calling out the big shiny things, but that are forward looking, but we're like talking about our revenue engine and like making that work and really like praising that part of the business.
That's really interesting and tricky, it sounds like, because it sounds like you, Laura, like you don't necessarily spend 70-20-10. Like maybe I don't know, what percentage do you think about Horizon 1 and 2, or is it Horizon 2 and 3 versus 1?
I think it's probably more like 50-50. So I am spending, for example, I'm for sure spending more time thinking about Horizon 2 and 3 compared to what the organization is doing. And I think it's important because we're seeking product market fit in those areas right now. So for example, I've been sending some like outbound sales emails myself this last week. When I go to conferences, I pitch kind of the forward-looking ideas to future customers and get feedback there. So yes, I'm spending more time on the forward-looking stuff myself, but I'm just careful to make sure that the organization is not following that lead.
It's really interesting because the temptation is, hey, if this is where Laura is spending her time, like, shouldn't we all be spending our time here? Is there anything that you do like on your direct team to sort of make that distinction clear? How do you map the people on your team to these different horizons?
There's no clear mapping, because the people who report into me are functional leaders right now. And I think there is a question of, would you like, have a different org structure? But we have functional leaders. And then within those functional like teams, like marketing, for example, or like R&D is actually much easier. Within R&D, then we have people working on kind of our core business, the SMB product, the web app. And now we have teams who are like experimenting with forward-looking products. Like, for example, we're building a shipping optimization product, a billing and reconciliation product. Those are more of the forward-looking things. And then like in kind of the crazy bucket where we have an AI product that someone's like playing with. But yes, so I think in R&D, it's like, it's pretty easy to like have boundaries between the core business and like forward-looking investments. And then it's a little harder to do on the other teams.
Well, like, what are the signals that a founder sees where they say, hey, it's time to think about Horizon 2, or it's time to think about Horizon 3? Like, when were those, was it a natural kind of thing for you, or how did that come about?
Okay. if you think about Apple, for example, like maybe like one of their earlier products, the what's it called? Like the iPod, like that iPod product, like that was selling like crazy. And then at some point they started investing in, I don't know, the iPhone and like products that we have now. So what I'm trying to say is like every organization has that moment of like the Horizon 1 product is like still driving a whole lot of revenue, but you feel like you need future horizons in order to keep that growth going. And ideally, you start investing in Horizon 2 and 3 when Horizon 1 is still growing very well. I think when Horizon 1 is like starting to flatten, it's a little too late. Yeah, it's a little like you should still do it, but it's a little too late to be optimal. That's all to say, like, I think you should always be looking at what are forward-looking products to invest in, but then there's a risk of being too forward-looking and getting yourself distracted on what actually works today. But yes, I think for founders, as soon as you've found product market fit with your existing product, I would start thinking about like, how do we scale this up? And then while we scale this up, what are some other things we can build that are more forward looking? And it does not need to be an entire pivot or like an entire new customer segment, an entirely new product that you're building. It can just be like other features that you're adding to your existing product for future growth.
Okay, let's move to your team and kind of leadership and your leadership style. I'm curious, what did the kind of early team look like in the first few years of Shippo? And was there anything sort of about that early set of critical team members that you think is still critical and still what you look for in folks at the company?
I think in the early team, you're looking for people who are able to wear all kinds of different hats, who are willing to get their hands dirty and do things themselves. And like they're really the kinds of like 0 to 1 people. And that's a distinct personality type. You probably are not looking for someone who's been, I don't know, a VP at a different company or something like that, but just, you know, builders, super scrappy people, humble and willing to do all kinds of work. We still have 2 people who were with us from day one in the company. So that's really rewarding to be able to keep some of those early folks around. But I do think that it is a distinct personality type. And like at times those people are not scalable when you need someone to scale this up. You might be looking at a different skill set and personality compared to the person who built it. It's difficult to figure that out because you do develop relationships with your early team members. It's difficult to figure out like when is the time to bring in someone else to scale this. And then good news though is that typically there are other things to be built in the company, so the builder can go and like go build something else in the company. So that is the good news, provided that person is self-aware and like willing to move into a different role. I think an easy or like a mistake that we made early on, I think hiring people with those fancy titles is a mistake that I often hear from other startup founders where like we had people where, you know, if someone's been a VP at Facebook at that point in time, I was like, oh, okay, this should be like, you know, if they're good enough for them, must be good enough for us. And it turns out that it's just a very different scale. It's a very different kind of environment to work in. And people who are happy there are probably not happy at a company of our stage.
And it sounds like maybe you learned that the hard way, you know, once or twice. Did you change the way you interview people or kind of like what you select for as a result of those learnings?
I think we are really like even now trying to figure out like what did this person do themselves? Like it's easy to talk about kind of wins in the organization, but then what did you do specifically to like get to that win? And just managing a team that got you there is probably not the right fit for our stage still. So yes, I think that was like just really drilling into like that person's contribution on projects, on wins, and getting like clear explanations there. We are like people who work well at our company. They have a strong like ownership mentality, and we like just revamped our values a few years ago to like, in the middle of the pandemic to make them a little more catchy. And we call it like, we're looking for people who are drivers, not packages. And it's really the shipping analogy of like, you're not just along for the ride, like in the back of the shipping van, but you are the driver of the shipping van delivering packages yourself.
That's a great one. What are the other values?
Let's see. One of my other favorites is path to green. Like because Shippo, our logo is green. And path to green means that you're always like not just looking for problems or finding problems, but you also bring along the solution. Like it's an easy one to use in a sentence. That's kind of what we're optimizing for, just like values that you can use in a sentence, not just a single word. So like, it's just like, what's the path to green here? Like great problem, but how do we fix this? I mean, obviously customers, so customers for the win. Like whatever we do, we put our customers first. And this is it can be a hard one because like, do you recommend shipping options that make the most margin for us? Or do you recommend shipping options that are best for the merchant? And like customer for the win, like makes it very easy, like how to decide questions like that.
So it's clear, Laura, that your individual background was so important kind of in the very early days. You had come from Germany, you wanted to be in Silicon Valley, you wanted to stay in Silicon Valley, so you had to make this work. Are there things about your individual background today that sort of shape how you think about Shippo and still impacts you in a way?
The first thing that comes to my mind is that I'm a first-time founder, so finding the right leaders that have done this before and leaders that I can learn from, leaders that like ideally can be like mentors in addition to team members has been key for me. And we have a really awesome team at the company right now. Like everyone on the team has kind of done a version of this at a different company before and is bringing their experience to Shippo while being willing to do it kind of the Shippo way, sticking to our values, doing it the way we do things. I think one mistake that founders tend to make is that they hire people who are a little bit too junior. And I think more recently we've been able to like attract talent that's been there, done that, and like pretty senior talent. And it's been a complete game changer for me, like being able to trust that people do what they said they do. And yeah, it's that simple. And then being able to teach me along the way.
Can you think of any like really critical hires that you made along the way and sort of, what you were thinking about when you hired them and then, wow, like that really worked out and here's why it worked out?
So I think it starts with, and I'm not even thinking about a specific person, but like when we hired our first like people leader, that was long overdue. And again, it was not top of mind for me. I feel like it is a role that founders hire a little too late for. But when we had that person and like also the person we have in place right now is just such a game changer, someone who is able to strategize with you on people related topics and help with kind of culture, values, like employee satisfaction and performance and just all of the things that are kind of top of mind for a founder, but kind of hard to operationalize. So that's one role that I think founders tend to hire a little too late for, because it seems like it's a nice to have role. Like there is no pressing, like it does not contribute to growth or customer acquisition. So it feels like it's overlooked. I think the person like on my mind right now is when we brought on a COO, like our current COO, Andreas. It was a huge game changer. Like being able to hand off all of the go-to-market related functions to a really reliable and trustworthy person, and allowing me to focus more on like kind of the horizons, forward-looking stuff, like where to invest on the R&D side, culture as well. Yeah, that was, I think, really big for us.
Are there things that you look back on either when it comes to product development, scaling products, or just, growing and leading a company that you feel are kind of unconventional or different from the way that you hear other founders doing it?
So a few years ago, at the beginning of the pandemic, or no, after like when things were starting to slow down a little bit, I got to attend kind of the first conference coming out of the pandemic where Frank from Snowflake gave a presentation.
Frank Slootman.
Yes. So he spoke at that conference, like hugely inspiring person and like great book as well. Very like strong-minded person. And he had one like very actionable piece of advice for the crowd when someone asked like, how do you stay connected in an environment where people are kind of more remote and you don't see people every single day? And his piece of advice was like, he writes an email every Sunday to the entire company. And it's not scripted, not reviewed by HR or legal. It's just his thoughts of the week. What's top of mind for him? What is he thinking about? It's completely unfiltered, including his emotions. Like, is he happy? Is he Is he satisfied with what's going on? And like, since hearing that from him, and he said he's doing it until today. So like, since hearing that from him, like, I thought this is something that I really want to try as well. And I've been doing it every Sunday since. It's like almost, I think, year and a half, 2 years now. And it's something that the team really is looking forward to. Like, I'm kind of embraced the same style, like the same direction as he was describing, like completely unfiltered. When things are going well, I say them exactly as they are. When things are going poorly, and like give shout outs in those emails, talk about how I feel about certain things. And yeah, people really appreciate them. People really like, they feel more of a connection. And I think it's been just because, yeah, we don't see each other in the office every single day. I don't get to talk to people every single day anymore. But yeah, I get like consistently really good feedback on that. And like a handful of responses every time. So it's something that, yeah, I've just really enjoyed doing. And I look forward to writing those emails too, because they help me kind of reflect on the last week and think about what's top of mind for me next week.
Do you feel like you have to be careful sometimes what you say in that email? You know, one of my partners at First Round, Josh Koppelman, founder of First Round, it says it's the founder's job to balance transparency and hope. And you've got to sort of keep them in balance. Because sometimes like if you're too transparent and like, oh, this was a horrible week and I'm so negative about everything. Well, it's like, okay, now, hundreds of people are reading that and they're like let down.
Okay, no. I mean, I don't think that works, but that's where our company value path to green comes in again. Like I'm a super optimistic person myself. So if something wasn't going well, I will say like, hey, like this didn't go so well last week. Like I've been thinking about that. But then like the path to green here, this is how I look at moving forward, how we can do this better, how we can prevent similar things from happening, or just like what our learnings are from this. And that's one of our other values, like ship to learn is one of our other values. We always want to learn from everything we do. So yes, I think it's fine to be transparent, but then like there should be a constructive takeaway from it that the team can use and apply in other settings.
Okay, Laura. So this has been great. To start wrapping up, I want to ask you some closing questions. What is some advice that you find yourself giving out over and over again?
I think given that this crowd is probably a startup audience, like I think what's worked, or when I reflect on what's worked for us, it is really just, you have to get started, like getting something out there in front of the customer. And your first idea might not be the idea you end up with. And that's perfectly fine. I've seen it with a whole lot of other startup founders now. The first idea looks very different from what they end up building and scaling. So yes, I think the challenge that I've seen for a lot of startup founders is just overthinking kind of what you're building, what you're working on. So my main piece of advice would be to like start building it and then like keep an open mind for how this could evolve over time.
And so do you find yourself giving advice on A, how do you choose an idea to get started on, but then B, like how to kind of validate that idea?
Yeah, I think to the first part of how to choose an idea, I think an idea, as long as it's good enough, like it's not completely ridiculous, let's start building that and get some validation along the way. And then I'd say like in terms of getting validation, it's really about like listening to customers, like talking to early customers, being hands-on in like customer support and sales and all of that stuff yourself, and then seeing what customers say and keeping an open mind that if they take you in a different direction, like early on, it's like it really doesn't cost too much to go explore it. I think it becomes more costly when you have an organization and like different people you need to manage. But if it's just you and the co-founder, like exploring a few different things is like, I think the right thing to do early on.
Who are the most memorable people or mentors that you've had in your career, and what did they teach you?
I was lucky enough to be able to work with two really awesome startup coaches, Jerry Colonna and Khaled Halim. So like I think one is from, both of them came up through Reboot, and Khaled now has his own thing. And I sought out a startup coach early on because I remember like a team member leaving the company and giving me the feedback that he did not think that I was acting like, a typical startup founder. And I came to Khaled back then kind of thinking that Like, I want to learn how to be, more like Mark Zuckerberg, more like Steve Jobs, more like those people. And I think the big realization there was like, no, we're like going to work on how to be more like yourself. And that was like, I think a big game changer for me, like embracing that, just my own style and not trying to be someone else at work. And it's just been rewarding, but also much less work to be able to just be yourself at work. And then I'd say the other part, like, it's not a specific person, but being able to talk to a whole lot of startup founders here in San Francisco. And I think that's why building in San Francisco is so awesome. Yes, being able to talk to other startup founders consistently and constantly shows me that like my problems are not unique. I'm not like the odd one out. Everyone's gone through similar challenges. And yeah, it's not a bad thing what we're experiencing right now.
Thank you, Laura. This has been awesome. I really appreciate you sharing your story and the Shippo story.